experience of more than 41 years. FICCI's Committee Against Smuggling and Counterfeiting Activities Destroying the Economy, Cascade, has been working under his able and guidance and leadership since its launch in 2011. Mr. Rajput is the driving force behind the committee. I request Sir to please make his welcome address. Sir,
Thank you, Kashifa. Thank you very much. It's my proud privilege today to the launch of Anti-Smuggling Day. I would like to welcome Shri Balesh Kumar, Member Investigation, Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, Mr. P.K. Das, Director, Compliance and Facilitation, Directorate, World Customs Organization, Mr. Najib Shah, former Chairman, Central Board of Indirect Taxes, Customs, and think tank member, FICCI Cascade, Mr. D.P. Dash, former Principal Director General, DRI, former Chairman, Enforcement Managing Committee, World Customs Organization, and think tank member, FICCI Cascade, Mr. Stefano Betti, Director General, Transnational Alliance to Combat Illicit Trade, Mr. Aniket Singh, DIG and Director, Indian Coast Guard, Mr. Amrish Kumar Arya, DIG, Border Security Force, Mr. Sanjeev Tripathi, former RAW Chief, Mr. Deep Chand, Special Commissioner, Delhi Police, Mr. P.C. Jha, former Chairman, CBIC, distinguished guests, other think tank members, Mr. Manmohan Sareen, a former Lokayukt, NCT of Delhi, Chief Justice High Court, Jammu and Kashmir, Judge, Delhi High Court, who will be joining us shortly. At the outset, let me welcome you all for joining us for this launch. This is a very special day in the history of Cascade. It is really very reassuring to have you all here. Together, we will relentlessly work towards generating greater awareness on addressing the illicit and damaging business of smuggling and its impact on the individuals, economies, and societies across the world. Traditionally, India has not been a market for branded goods. This, however, has changed in the last few decades. And this with the increasing purchasing power and greater access to modern lifestyle, fueled desire for better life for most Indians. And this has brought the attendant problem of smuggling and counterfeiting in the country. Industry is working around the clock and making greater investments in R&D to provide competitively superior products at a reasonable price and the best quality. Unfortunately, illicit players leverage this brand salience and with the end objective of making quick money illegally push these products, which many a times are of substandard quality into the market. This has over the years given rise to illicit activities such as smuggling of goods across borders, not only in India, but all over the world. According to the World Economic Forum, in 2020, illicit trade has resulted in an annual drain of 2.2 trillion, which is approximately 3% of world's GDP. The World Economic Forum Annual Global Risk Report also lists illicit trade and associated proliferation of illicit economic activity as a global risk, with the potential to cause significant negative impact for several countries or industries within the next few years, we are going to have several challenges. Smuggling is highly rewarding business where criminal entrepreneurs involved in such nefarious activities seek to exploit and indulge in regulatory arbitrage opportunities to gain economically. Transnational smuggling through international channels involving outright smuggling of products or misdeclaration, under-invoicing of values is a common and a rapidly growing problem in India as well as other parts of the world. Smuggling activities cause severe financial drain to the exchequer. According to 2019 study by Ficky Cascade, a large-scale smuggling in only 5 key industry sectors resulted a loss of 1,17,000 crore to the Indian economy. But what we typically overlook is the greater damage it causes to the nation, which becomes victim of such illegal activities. This is corroborated in the same report, which goes to estimate job losses to the tune of 16.36 lakh due to smuggling for the same industry sectors. Besides unemployment and massive financial losses, smuggling also creates large-scale destabilization by fomenting crime, generating black money, and funding devastating terror groups. Several studies indicate that most notorious terrorist organizations of the world, like Al Qaeda, ISIS, Hezbollah, and many others, are into illicit trade of oil, cigarettes, clothing, bags, mobile, antique, and list goes on. It depends where, what kind of arbitrage they find. They use the proceeds from smuggling to fund their terror operation and play havoc with the lives of the people. India is poised to be one of the most dynamic economies of the world. As nations grow and prosper, so does the ambition of those who are determined to wreak havoc to its financial, social, and overall well-being. Therefore, in the years to come, our challenge is going to be much bigger as illicit players will devise new ways and means to hurt our country's growth and development, thereby creating major hurdles for India and its aspiration of becoming a 5 trillion economy by 24-25. United Nations designates specific days, weeks, years, and decades as occasions to mark particular events or topics in order to promote its importance through awareness and action. Along with important days such as International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, International Anti-Corruption Day, there is also the United Nations Convention against Transnational Organized Crime. These international instruments promote cooperation to prevent and combat the global problem of such illegal activities more effectively. While there is widespread understanding on the enormity of the illegal transporter trade in drugs, wildlife, cigarette, arms, and ammunition, and trading items of many multinational organizations, strangely, people shy away from bringing smuggling as a major cause of illegal transporter trade. In order to emphasize and generate awareness that the root cause of illicit trade lies in smuggling, Vicky Cascade has taken the lead in launching Anti-Smuggling Day today. Vicky Cascade has decided to dedicate a day every year emphasizing the importance and magnitude of this global menace. As it gathers pace, it is bound to minimize the dreadful impact of smuggling and related activities. It is indeed reassuring to see that the policymakers, representatives from international institutions, enforcement agencies, members from industry, media, and consumers have joined us today. As India celebrates 75 years of its independence, Resolve at 75, which essentially means enforcing our commitment to specific goals and targets, stands as one of the pillars of this celebration. In this context, it is only through our collective resolve, concrete action plans, and determined efforts that we will be able to set the momentum to bring each one of us together to raise awareness and devise an effective strategy that will empower us to counter this formidable enemy in the best possible manner. It is my personal belief that this war cannot be won without greater participation of the consumers, because consumers are the major source which can help fight this menace by taking active participation and saying no to illicit goods. So therefore, we would continue to work together in raising consumer sensitization so that as time passes by, more and more consumers come forward and begin to say no to illicit trade. Enforcement agencies are continuously working hard, and I see as the year goes by, harder and harder to fight this menace, and my compliments to all of them. As the famous saying goes, a journey of 1,000 miles begin with a step. That step we have taken today. And I am confident of your wholehearted support. I wish this endeavor all the very best. Thank you very much. Jai Hind. Back to you, Kashifa.
Thank you so much, sir, for your address. As we all know, the problem of smuggling is widespread and directly affecting the economy of our country. To discuss this in detail, we have with us Mr. Najib Shah, former chairman, Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, and think tank member of Wiki Cascade. Mr. Shah, in his illustrious career spanning for more than 37 years, have held several assignments, including in the High Commission of India in Singapore. As a chairman CBIC and a special invitee to the GST Council, he was involved with the process leading to the formulation of GST laws. He was closely associated with the implementation of WTO Agreement on Trade Facilitation, and Mr. Shah is a recipient of the Presidential Award for Distinguished Record of Service. May I request, sir, to please make the opening remarks and moderate the session on containing the menace of smuggling, securing national economy. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. At the outset, let me compliment Mr. Anil Rajput, whose initiative it was to have an anti-smuggling day brought into focus. As he has eloquently brought out, the damage that smuggling causes to the economy globally is well known. 3% of GDP is a humongous amount. At the end of the day, smuggling, we should never forget, is an economic activity. It meets the gap between the supply and demand. And what Wiki Cascade, the think tank, has sought to do is to peg how much exactly the loss is, not just in terms of loss of revenue to the government of India, but also loss in terms of employment and the damage which such joblessness causes in the economy. The Fact of the matter remains, unfortunately, that while smugglers across borders have close cooperation, enforcement agencies, leave alone across borders, even within the country, suffer from lack of cooperation and coordination. And my belief is that what the Anti-Smuggling Day, apart from creating awareness in the consumers about the nefarious impact of smuggling itself does to the economy, brings into a common forum enforcement agencies, all of whom are tasked with similar objectives. Smuggling hurts the economy, and be it the customs, be it the DRI, the Apex Intelligence Agency under the Customs Organization, be it the Border Security Force, be it the Coast Guard, or be it any other agency, they're all concerned with ensuring the security and integrity of the nation is protected at all times. And Anti-Smuggling Day, apart from creating awareness amongst the consumers, also by bringing all these multifarious agencies on a common platform, will, I'm sure, increase coordination and cooperation and trust amongst agencies. So yes, like Mr. Rajput has mentioned, we have now commenced a journey of 1,000 miles, and I'm sure going forward, the coordination and cooperation will only increase. We have with us today a formidable array of distinguished speakers. So without any further ado, let me start the process of the session itself. At the outset, we have Mr. Stefano Betti from TRACIT. TRACIT is an acronym for the Transnational Alliance to Combat Illicit Trade. This is an independent business-led initiative created to mitigate the economic and social damages of illicit trade. Mr. Betti has worked for several years for the UN Office on Drugs and Crime and Interpol. He was involved with capacity building activities against transnational organized crime, corruption, and terrorism. He has collaborated with several international organizations, including the World Bank, on projects relating to the recovery of criminal assets. Over to you, Mr. Betti. We are all ears.
Chairman, thank you very much for your words and for your nice introduction. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Many thanks also to Fiki for the opportunity that has been given to TRACIT to say a few words on the occasion of Anti-Smuggling Day. Smuggling is a very complex and multifaceted phenomenon. It is a vast subject, and there are many perspectives and many things that could be said and addressed in this regard. So I think in the little time that is available to me, I will just put forward a few key points from a global perspective for your consideration, and from a global perspective, actually. And so those are the points, by the way, that TRACIT, the organization that I am representing here, is busy addressing daily with our governmental partners, international organizations, and the business community at large, including FICI itself. Right? So the term smuggling is itself the object of numerous definitions that circulate worldwide, and these definitions differ from each other depending on whether they are used in a legal, in a policy, in a law enforcement, or in an academic context. And there are also variations depending on the type of goods under consideration. Despite all the differences, however, it seems to us that all existing definitions have a minimum common denominator, which is captured in the idea of smuggling being a set of activities aimed at moving or facilitating the moving of goods across borders in violation of applicable laws. It's very broad. same time, it is also very important to highlight that smuggling activities generate a wide range of economic and social impacts. And Mr. Raiput has already delved into them. Loss of revenues for governments, loss of regular employment opportunities for communities and individuals, loss of income and incentives to invest for legitimate businesses, threats to consumers. Think about just the circulation of substandard medical products, threats to the environment and ecosystems. Think about the smuggling of timber, which in many parts of the world is contributing to massive unsustainable deforestation, which in turn is leading and accelerating climate change. And then, yes, last but not least, empowering organized criminal networks for which smuggling activities are an important source of revenue and proceeds that are then reinvested in other criminal activities or used to consolidate territorial control in many parts of the world and finance their own infiltration in the legal economy, etc. So with interest in addressing smuggling, whether in general or in relation to specific manifestations, we always find it useful to examine the problem in terms of its drivers, its enablers, and the possible responses that can be given to it. So let me just very briefly say a few words about the drivers. So firstly, when the ordinary people think about smuggling, they instinctively think about tobacco and alcohol. And these are actually products subject to a special form of taxation, excise duties, and experience shows that the existence of tax differentials across jurisdictions that concerns not only alcohol and tobacco, but other products. Tax differentials, especially between neighboring countries, are a very powerful incentive for smuggling activities, from the low tax environment towards the high tax environment. And the same reasoning applies to goods that receive governmental subsidies. While these subsidies are often introduced for the laudable cause of making basic necessities more affordable to consumers, the reality is that a good chunk of them often ends up in the pockets of smugglers. Secondly, in terms of drivers, historically, a significant driver for smuggling has been the imposition of economic embargoes on countries. Embargoes, for example, decided by the international community. The problem here is that even when the economic sanctions are lifted, the smuggling mentality persists. The illegal trading routes are now created and continue to be used for new types of contraband. Okay? And then you have the type of smuggling induced by a strong demand for goods whose circulation is prohibited or subject to quotas. And a typical example of this is the smuggling of protected wildlife species. Turning very briefly to the enablers, the role that corruption plays in facilitating and making smuggling possible will never be emphasized enough. And it's not just about corruption at borders. There are many points along product supply chains where goods can be siphoned off from legitimate supply chains through corruptive behavior. Research has shown, for example, that medicines are stolen very frequently from hospitals and then smuggled thanks to bribes paid to doctors, to nurses, to hospital staff. We know that fake and tampered export licenses are provided by employees of regulatory agencies in exchange for undue advantages and so on and so forth. And it should also not be forgotten that smuggling networks rely heavily on the cheap and abundant workforce provided by members of disadvantaged communities, unfortunately, which often live in border regions and that would do anything to scrap a living. And unfortunately, these are very often the only people that get caught and brought to justice, while the kingpins remain at large. So, which leads me to say just a few words about the ways to respond to smuggling practices. And without claiming to be exhaustive, we think that there are 2 or 3 points worth throwing into the discussion, again, for your consideration. First of all, nowadays we have cutting-edge track and trace solutions available to industry and law enforcement to monitor the movement of goods throughout supply chains. We have GPS-based monitoring, we have solutions based on radio frequency, and most recently, blockchain is developing as a very innovative solution. Moreover, when track and trace solutions are combined with the use of the newest authentication solutions against counterfeiting, we really have powerful means to detect any leakages in supply chains. So there is really no dearth of highly reliable technological tools. What's still missing is the willingness, to connect them in a way to ensure their interoperability. And this applies to both proprietary and non-proprietary solutions. So in a way, to a good extent, the challenge is no longer a technological one. It's about coordination pure and simple. And I'm glad that our chairman, Mr. Shah, referred to this issue, coordination, already in his opening remarks. And it shows, in my opinion, that technology can become an amazing anti-smuggling tool, but also lead to detrimental effects. It may also lead to more fragmentation and silos. And it very much depends on the direction in which we decide to steer it. Secondly, a few minutes ago, I mentioned how tax differentials across jurisdictions are a powerful driver for smuggling. And I would add that in principle, countries are sovereign and free to set taxation levels to pursue their policy objectives. Often, for example, they decide to increase the excise tax on certain products to disincentivize the public from consuming those products on health grounds. The problem here is that too often these public policy decisions don't take into account the whole picture. Intuitively, if you decide to increase taxation levels above a certain threshold for certain products, you end up fueling the black market. Even children can understand that. This is why it's critical the measures proposed, put forward, discussed by governments in relation to health, for example, or tax issues, should not be discussed in isolation. Instead, they should be part of a comprehensive evaluation, part of a real strategy on how to deal with the full range of consequences that new regulations have on the security domain, including smuggling. And last but not least, I wanted to stress risk management. This should really become the new paradigm in efforts to detect illicit consignments, in general, to handle smuggling. It's risk management is certainly not a new concept. We're not inventing anything new here, but it's a concept that is still not sufficiently implemented. And if we all agree that it makes no sense to, for example, in the customs domains, to rely purely on random checks, or to open for inspection every single container that shows up at an air, maritime, or road border, we are left really with one option: make choices about what to inspect, prioritize and optimize our use of scarce law enforcement resources. And what I'm saying, risk management applies not only to the customs environment, but also to decisions, for example, by the police on when and where to conduct a raid. It applies to investigators when they have to decide when to apply certain special investigative techniques, which are costly and need to be used only sparingly. For example, when to use controlled deliveries, a very powerful investigative technique, but one that is very costly in terms of resources. So in order to do all of this, however, we need to assess the risk. We need to be able to create red flags based on sound intelligence. And we need to be able, for example, and here I'm going back to the customs domain, we need to be able to receive advanced cargo information in a systematic manner. Here again, technology in the form of big data analytics, artificial intelligence can make the difference. But equally important is the creation of sustained flows of information between public authorities and the private sector. Industry is a critical part of the equation, and this is why at Traceit we are forging partnerships constantly with intergovernmental agencies, such as the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, which was also my previous employer. Partnerships to ensure, for example, that one of their flagship anti-illicit trade initiative, which is the container control program, can benefit from private sector input, because this leads clearly to better intelligence for risk management. So let me just conclude by saying that smuggling is one of the oldest activities that humans have engaged in since they have organized themselves in sovereign political communities. It cannot be eradicated, but it can be better controlled and its consequences mitigated. With that, I very much hope that this important event will contribute to rejuvenating efforts in this domain and really steer policymakers' agenda towards a renewed commitment and attention for this problem. And I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bhatti. You have really covered a wide canvas, starting from the multiple definitions itself of smuggling. In India itself, we have a similar definition of smuggling in our Customs Act. It says that smuggling means any goods, in relation to any goods, means any act of omission or commission, which will make the goods liable to confiscation, right? Which in effect basically means violation of the laws which are presently in force. You'd be happy to know that we have a very vibrant and robust risk management system in India itself. Obviously, it is essential given the sheer volume of traffic and the need to focus on the riskier cargo and the riskier elements going through. We have also with us Mr. P.K. Das, who's the director, WCO, the World Customs Organization, which drives very many of the initiatives which you mentioned about globally across customs administrations. So thank you so much. But would you like to say something? Because we are aware also of Traceit's study on the impact of smuggling on SDGs, which we found very interesting. And last time your colleague, Mr. Hardy, had come here, he had highlighted that to us. Would you briefly like to tell us about that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But we're very glad that FICCI has appreciated this report on the impact that illicit trade is having on slowing down the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. You're all welcome to look at the executive summary and full text of the report available on our internet page. It's basically the first report of its kind that tries to analyze the extent to which illicit trade in 12 critical sectors is making the achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals more difficult. And basically the main finding of this report is that illicit trade is a very significant drain on achieving most, if not all, of these goals that the United Nations has set for countries to achieve by 2032. So you have individual illicit trade sectors like illicit trade in forestry, in tobacco, in oil, in alcohol, that have a direct or indirect impact on average on the achievement of 8 to 10 Sustainable Development Goals. So it's a report that aims to wake up in a little bit the conscience of the international community of policymakers to understand illicit trade not just and not only in terms of loss of financial revenues, but also in terms of its very serious impact on the achievement of public goods and basic social needs and social issues.
Thank you very much. And again, reacting to the striking a balance between the imposition of a tax and the consequences of the imposition of tax. I have been a tax administrator, and I can assure you it's an extremely difficult call because on the one hand, you impose a tax not just for raising revenue, but for very many social reasons, like you rightly pointed out. And we also, at that point of time, do weigh the consequences and assume that we have made the right calls, but not always right, as we discover later. But thank you so much for your presence, for your words, and we surely have very many takeaways from your talk. Our next speaker is Mr. Aniket Singh, DIG and Director, Anti-Smuggling and Narcotics Control from the Indian Coast Guard. Incidentally, the Indian Coast Guard celebrated its 46th Raising Day very recently. Just to give you some backdrop, the Coast Guard itself has a force of more than 158 ships and 70 aircrafts, has worked very closely with the customs administrations over the period of time. They have been extremely cooperative with the customs administrations in detecting very many cases of gold in the good old days and narcotics currently. Mr. Aniket Singh is a specialized meteorological officer who has commanded 3 Indian Coast Guard vessels in this past. He was awarded the DGICG commendation in 2013. At present, he is the Director Anti-Smuggling and Narcotics Control at Coast Guard Headquarters, where he has coordinated very many anti-narcotics operations. Over to you, Mr. Aniket Singh.
Thank you, sir. I hope I'm audible. Good afternoon, and thank you once again. I'll deliver my talk with a small PowerPoint presentation. I believe it will be easier for the audience also to know and understand on this very subjective topic. Chairman FICCI Cascade, Shri Anil Rajput, members of the FICCI Cascade, distinguished speakers from various organizations, eminent guests from media, and learned audience. A very good afternoon to you all. It is indeed my privilege to have been invited by the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry to discuss a very contemporary and germane subject of containing the menace of smuggling, securing national economy. I also congratulate the Federation on their novel initiative of the launching of Anti-Smuggling Day 2022 today. And I'm sure that this initiative will bring more integration in our combined efforts to curb this menace. As I represent Indian Coast Guard in this August forum, through this presentation, I shall give you an overview of the challenges being faced and effort undertaken by us in containing maritime smuggling, with particular emphasis on drug trafficking while ensuring maritime and coastal security and how industry can support us in our endeavors. In fact, one of the primary factors for the advent of Indian Coast Guard was to combat the rise in smuggling activities in the 70s, apart from the maritime obligations arising out of proclamation of EEZ and development of offshore development areas. Starting from a humble beginning of 7 ships, Indian Coast Guard has now progressed to form the 4th largest Coast Guard in the world with about 158 ships and 70 plus aircrafts, which are primarily low-cost economic platforms built indigenously in India in tune with the national vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, as an independent peacekeeping maritime armed force, Indian Coast Guard enjoys a well-defined charter of duties ranging from the constabulary, the humanitarian, and environmental as shown on the screen. Anti-smuggling operations, of course, form one of our primary charters and remain a key area to achieve desired standards of maritime and coastal security. Ladies and gentlemen, oceans are lifelines of global prosperity, and with about 80% of the volume of goods carried by sea routes, ensuring freedom of navigation for legitimate trade and its security through a robust maritime security framework gains prominence. I'm sure you would agree. Securing the assets and resources within the maritime zones, as also to establish the sovereign rights and mitigating the threats emerging from the maritime realm, is the ultimate aim of maritime and coastal security. Now, before I highlight the threats and challenges that need to be addressed, it would be prudent for me to draw your attention to the gamut of assets in the maritime zones of India and associated vulnerabilities, just to prompt you on the stakes involved. India possesses considerable infrastructure and assets of economic importance along the coastline as well as in the maritime zones. Our 7,500 plus kilometer long coastline has witnessed phenomenal growth during the past decade, not only in terms of populace, but infrastructure also. The coastline today is hence abuzz with activity and harbors a host of industrial units, ports, military installations, refineries, nuclear power plants, and strategic oil reserves. Undoubtedly, this bodes well for the Indian industry, and it's bound to act as a catalyst for further economic and social development. Moving seaward from coastline, India's 2.1 million square kilometer exclusive economic zone, and this is a huge number, about 1.5 times bigger than our landmass. It holds a plethora of maritime interests, including oil, offshore installations, non-conventional energy potential, and the living and non-living resources, including fish and mineral wealth on the seabed. Also, operating out of our coast is our fishing industry, comprising over 2.5 lakh registered fishing boats with about 4 million strong fisher community, and a central source of food and livelihood for a large section of economically backward population, especially in coastal areas. Our vast coastline and even larger EEZ make it susceptible for exploitation for anti-national activities, smuggling being one of them. The major challenge, hence, is to deny the use of seas for inimical purposes and protect the critical assets and resources. Providing coastal and maritime security to our coastline and EEZ is not easy, but rather a complex and challenging task. I would now present before you one of the issues of concern, as previous speakers have also talked about it. It is not only an issue of concern for us as a maritime law enforcer, but also a threat to national economy and society at large. Yes, I'm talking about smuggling of narcotics and contrabands through maritime routes. India, due being wedged between the world's two largest areas of illicit opium production, with the Golden Crescent, or the drug crescent as we should call it, in the west, and the drug triangle on the eastern side, make us vulnerable to transit, trafficking, and consumption of opium derivatives in various forms along the known trafficking routes. The modus operandi of the drug traffickers keeps on evolving, and we have to be one step ahead of them in order to subvert their nefarious designs. I am indeed proud to inform this August gathering that the zero tolerance approach adopted by Indian Coast Guard against transnational drug trafficking has resulted in back-to-back seizure of narcotics in various intelligence-based operations, and I must thank our intelligence agencies for that. And it is believed to have successfully disrupted the southward flow of drugs in Arabian Sea, while also pushing them much beyond the limits of our exclusive economic zone. We are also maintaining close liaison with our neighborhood littorals, and as a result of information sharing by Indian Coast Guard, the Coast Guard of littoral neighbors have also seized sizable quantities of drugs in their maritime zones, thus making our region more safe. The details of narcotics and contrabands seized by Indian Coast Guard is as shown on the foil and reflects our crusade against the international drug trafficking syndicates in the recent times. Contraband seizure, as you can see on the screen, an assortment of various contrabands ranging from gold, turmeric, basically custom infringement goods, to sea cucumber with marine wildlife, textiles, and so on. This data is for past 2 years. So let us have a look at what are the challenges facing us in the maritime domain. The core challenge, you would agree, of maritime security in general and coastal security in particular is the complicated maritime environment with lots and lots of stakeholders. As we all know, situational awareness is the first and fundamental requirement of security. We have achieved considerable progress post 2611 towards realizing a holistic surface picture, especially close to our coast, through Coast Guard's chain of static sensors and enhanced daily average deployment of about 45 to 50 ships per day and 10 to 12 aircraft per day. But challenges still remain with respect to small targets, particularly sub-20 meter targets, as well as inherent difficulties in screening of large number of vessels flying through the sea lanes of communication close to our coast. The identification problem is not limited to fishing and merchant vessels alone, but also includes thousands of containers, as Mr. Stefano Betti has brought out, that are loaded and unloaded at Indian ports, as we have seen in the case of recovery of 3,000 kg drugs from a container at one of our ports. It is here that technology can play a major role, and industry can provide a solution to keep our coast more secure. It is our utmost belief. Verification of antecedents of the crew of all vessels and the cargo they carry, that also poses a huge challenge, not only owing to the volume of such traffic, but also due to the lack of resources and integrated technology for verifying their genuineness. With that, I come to possible futuristic wayheads that we can deliberate upon. The monitoring, control, and surveillance, in short, MCS, of large Indian fishing fleet continues to be the Achilles heel of the coastal security. fitment of automated tracking and identification system on board all vessels, including less than 20-meter vessels, would also strengthen the monitoring mechanism in territorial waters through our chain of static sensor, which has already been established all along the coast. We have also seen many fishing vessels using Chinese-made second-hand AI sets without resetting the data, which is another cause of concern for us as it electronically reflects the boat as a Chinese or any foreign entity. Therefore, a tailor-made, user-friendly, low-cost, tamper-proof, made in India AIS set with inbuilt alarm and alert system would probably be the answer to these concerns and go a long way in strengthening our coastal security mechanism. Further, verification of crew credentials at sea is being done physically at present, which is, you would understand, a labor-intensive and time-consuming process. Technological interventions in the form of e-verification of crew from a distance at sea through face recognition software or scanning mechanism, with the particular good amount of R&D thrown in would be a definite advantage in sorting out, metaphorically speaking, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Coming to the landing center monitoring, that is on the coast, no amount of surveillance at sea can substitute a robust monitoring mechanism ashore. Continuous monitoring of the numerous fish landing centers and fishing harbors in the country is required. In fact, I'm happy to inform that few states have taken note of it and addressing it through a judicial mix of physical monitoring and electro-optic technology. Other technological solutions such as RFID and biometric sensors, in addition to physical access control, would pave way for a formidable shore-based surveillance mechanism. Atmanirbharta is the buzzword today. Atmanirbharta or the self-reliance. An adequate push is being given by the government in this field. In addition to reliability and timely technical support, indigenization ensures technological advancements to keep pace with our evolving requirements. With the government's thrust on Make in India and by Indian, the challenge now lies with you, the doyens of the industry, to make us Atmanirbhar in the field of establishing an indigenous monitoring and surveillance network for our seas. Although there are some, but still a lot more need to be done. I'm sure there is ample R&D potential within the Indian industry to develop robust systems and sensors. For example, in the field of solid-state radars, nanotechnology, container screening systems, maritime intelligence and risk analysis software, and so on, which would prove to be relatively cost-effective and also can be scaled up technologically in tune with future requirements. Unmanned aerial platforms or UAVs have already proven their utility in terrestrial domain, and the indigenous development of a high-endurance maritime version UAV with interdiction capabilities for law enforcement duties at sea would definitely be a great boost to effective maritime surveillance and definitely a win-win situation for industry as well as maritime security agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, in the long run, a well-lit coastal security mechanism comprising of satellite-based surveillance system, chain of static sensors, tracking system for small crafts operating at sea, and surface and air assets with high detection capability will provide a robust security system capable of neutralizing anti-national elements near or far away from Indian coast. The Indian Coast Guard looks up to industry to give us added teeth in the form of state-of-the-art platforms, sensors, communication and surveillance equipment, both hardware and software, which are cost-effective and maintenance-free largely, and would definitely go a long way in keeping our sea area safe and secure, thereby allowing our economy to thrive. I would like to end my presentation with a quote which I think aptly recognizes the contribution of industry in serving the growth of national economy. And before concluding, I would like to express my gratitude to FICCI Cascade for organizing this discussion and also congratulate the winners of the online art poster making competition on Anti-Smuggling Day. With this, I conclude. Thank you, Jai Hind, and Vayam Rakshana.
made a very passionate plea to FICCI, and I'm sure they'll be hearing you to extend all cooperation and coordination to strengthen your technological prowess to meet the challenges of smuggling. Would you like to tell us something about your experience itself with the cooperation and coordination which you have had with customs operations on the field? That will be something which will be very interesting for us to hear from you.
In fact, as I said earlier, that in the 70s there was rise in smuggling activities, and the formulation of Coast Guard was the result of one of these factors to combat these nefarious activities at sea and enforce rule-based order and law enforcement activities at sea. Customs, yes, we have been in close coordination with customs and other agencies, even like DRI or other law enforcement agencies. We have had various operations, and as I told you, in fact, when I was showing the list of contrabands where we had seized some gold and textile, and all these all are custom infringement goods. So these all operations were done in association with custom and likewise agencies. And we really have a good rapport, maintaining close liaison, had a string of successful operations with these agencies, and we definitely look forward to do much more in coming times. Thank you.
Ashifa, we lost Mr. Shah on the line.
Yes, sir. Should we wait for a second for him to reconnect, sir?
Yes, please.
So he's back. Mr. Shah, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just got cut off for a minute. I can hear you. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Mr. Aniket Singh. We move on now to our next speaker, Mr. Amrish Kumar Arya. Incidentally, the BSF also celebrated its raising very recently in the month of December. They are by far the largest border guarding force in the world, and they have some of the most challenging borders, 4,000 odd kilometers in Bangladesh, 3,000 odd kilometers in the Pakistan border. And we are very, very proud of them and the cooperation, the coordination they have been having with the other forces working on the border. Mr. Arya himself has an experience of more than 31 years in border management. He has vast experience in anti-military and anti-Naxal operations. He has also served in the SPG. Over to you, Mr. Arya.
Good morning, sir. First of all, I want to congratulate FICCI Cascade for organizing WebEx program on the tackling of the menace of smuggling in the country and bringing all the law enforcing agencies together on one single platform. I also congratulate FICCI Cascade for launching the Anti-Smuggling Day today, that is 11th February, and hope to achieve the aim. Sir, a little bit about the BSF, sir. So BSF, as you know, that it was raised in 1965, and one of its peacetime task is to prevent trans-border crimes. And in the trans-border crimes, smuggling is one of the major activities. So India has 15,106 kilometers of land border, and out of that, we are manning 4,096.7 kilometers of borders with the Pakistan and 4,096.7 kilometers of borders with Bangladesh and 3,323 kilometers of border with Pakistan. The major smuggling activities on Pakistan border, as all of you are aware, is of narcotic items, arms, ammunitions, and you must be getting the news through various dailies. Recent activities of drones, which we have shot down a number of times. But at the same time, we are having smuggling activities of day-to-day commodities, including timber, food grains, precious metals, gold, silver, currencies of other countries, euro, dollar, Saudi riyals, and narcotic substances, including ganja, heroin, yaba tablets, fancy dial items, and little bit incidents of seizure of arms ammunition as well. For layman, the border is a straight line between two countries, but on ground, the alignment of the border is very complex and very difficult to comprehend. Even at times, we are also find it difficult to comprehend where the border lies. The international border boundary is starting from the Sundarban areas in West Bengal, which is a peculiar, which has a peculiarities in itself, passes through various nalas, through rivers, through various villages. You would find that half of the village lying on India's side and the remaining part of the village on Bangladesh side. And at the same time, you would find that IB passing through houses, the kitchenettes in Bangladesh and the rest of the houses in India. So it is very difficult to man this kind of border. The IB passes through mountainous and dense forest areas in northeast states also, sir. So this makes the task of border security force, the largest border security force, as you all know, BSF, very, very difficult. So starting from scratch in 1965, BSF has been able to get a lot of infrastructure into the border area. As I already briefed you about the length of the border with the Indo-Bangladesh border. Sir, we have acquired almost land all along the border. The patch of land as per our requirement, and the border security infrastructure has already been completed, except few patches where it is very difficult and likely that it is not possible to erect the border security fence. That because of the river area, the low-lying area, and a lot of expertise is required. We have got the expertise or experts from the other countries, those who have studied the border problems, and they are coming up with some solutions also. But there are a lot of gaps which are yet to be fenced because of various reasons. There are a lot of land is yet to be acquired because of some resistance from the villagers. But in larger area, we have been able to get the border infrastructure, including the security fence and the border floodlights. There are a lot of difficulties in in the border on West Bengal, like we have Charland area. That area remains water filled in most period of the year, but suddenly you will find that water has receded, and it has we have found a lot of sandy area there, and it is very difficult to traverse. So it is very difficult to ply the any kind of vehicle in that area. But with the recent induction of mounted staff in that area, we are again coming up with better management of that border. I would like to highlight this platform that BSF is taking all possible initiative to seal its border using various means and latest technologies, including drones, security cameras, and solar-based solar-based proximity rights also, sir. So I would like to apprise this August gathering that in 2021, BSF has been able to seize 20,133 cases of various items of narcotics, including 614 cases of heroin worth rupees 3,100 crore rupees. Fancy dial, we have been able to seize more than 3 lakhs in 3 lakh bottles, and Yaba tablet, more than around 8 lakhs of Yaba tablet we have been able to seize on the border side. So recently we have inducted or we have placed high resolution cameras all in most sensitive part of the border area all along the Indo-Bangladesh border as well as on Indo-Pakistan border also. And the work is also under progress. We have recently received a lot of project concurred from Ministry of Home Affairs, and the work would be starting during this year, sir. But the area which is unfenced remain a challenge for border security force. But with the help of local population, we have been able to contain the smuggling in that unfenced area also, sir. And we have also taken initiative to impart the education about the harms of smuggling in the border area. We are carrying out a lot of education programs for the border areas. Even we have started training the youths in the border area so that these people, those who are lured because of the making of easy money in the border area, we have trained them to go for the competitions, and we have yield good results. Sir, this year, sir, we are imparting training to approximately 5,000 students in the border area, so that these people, or these students, they are able to keep themselves away from the smuggling activities and are able to fight or go for the competitive exams. And we have given them training to get themselves recruited in BSF as well, and the other paramilitary forces also, sir. Sir, BSF has been able to recover goods from all kinds of means of transportation, including from the cycles, from the motorcycles, from the trucks. And you would be surprised to know that recently we have recovered currencies worth 10 lakhs of foreign currencies worth 10 lakhs rupees from the tire tubes of the motorcycle cycle. And day before yesterday, sir, we have been able to bust a factory. A few days back, a factory from one of the areas of border, which was into the making of illicit fancy dials, and fancy dial worth lakhs of rupees has been seized from them. They have got all the labeling, everything which was akin to the real manufacturer, but we got the verification from them that it was all illicit. As you know, that it is very easy to earn money through smuggling activities. Therefore, we are also conducting various civil action programs in border areas. We are getting the aids from Ministry of Home Affairs, and we are. You also know that because of all these smuggling activities, the demographic pattern in the border area has changed, because it is very easy to make money in the border area. But through these civil action programs, we are engaging the people into different activities, different business activities, and it has yielded good result. Sir, we have been receiving, or we have been conducting programs in coordination with various law enforcing agencies, and we have received good cooperation from them also. So I look forward to get the same kind of cooperation in future also, sir. And with this, I conclude my presentation, sir. That's all, sir. Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aniket Singh. I'm sure all enforcement agencies will extend all cooperation to you simply because it's in their good interest. We also deeply appreciate the fact that you work in extremely challenging areas of the border and are doing yeoman service for the security of the nation. We are duly proud of you. We are also very, very proud of our next speaker, Mr. Pranab Kumar Das, our representative, if I could say, in the World Customs Organization, though, of course, he is there in his independent capacity now as the Director in charge of compliance and enforcement. Mr. Pranab Kumar Das comes with a rich experience of over 36 years in customs and indirect tax administrations. He was the chairman of the CBIC, from where he went as the director. He was he played a crucial role in seeing India's World Bank rankings under the pillar of trading across borders improve from 146 to 68, and the overall ease of doing business rankings itself came down from 100 to 63. He's also a recipient of the Presidential Award for Specially Distinguished Record of Service. The World Customs Organizations, if I may say, is the apex global body which advises customs administrations across the world. Over to you, PK Das.
You are on mute, Mr. Das.
Audible now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Najib Shah. Dear Mr. Anil Rajput, Chairman of FICCI Cascade, Mr. Balesh Kumar, Justice Mr. Sareen, distinguished panelists, delegates, and participants. It is my pleasure to address you today on the occasion of the launch of the Anti-Smuggling Day 2022. Throughout its long and distinguished history, FICCI has been the strong voice of Indian private sector on the national and international arenas. The WCO truly believes and promotes private-public partnership, and that is why our continuous engagement with you is very important for us. Global trade, as we know, went through a metamorphosis in the last decades. We witnessed streamlining of logistics and growth of e-commerce and courier delivery services, innovations in maritime sector as well as air sector and various other domains, growing number of travelers and trade. Even the COVID-19 crisis that encapsulated the globe during the past years contributed to it by stimulating some sectors such as e-commerce. Along with e-commerce and new delivery methods, electronic payment by SMS become a daily routine even in remote villages in Africa. Even this sketchy glimpse on progress in technology, logistics, and communications is indicative of a tremendous step forward that helped to improve lives of millions of people and even lift them from poverty. It is here that smugglers and other criminals have also been profiting from the fruits of globalization and technological advances. They are known to be agile, creative, resistant, and resilient. Their world is very complex, as Mr. Betty has indicated. They use all kinds of technological and logistical innovations to gain illegal profits. They penetrate legitimate global supply chains, bypass laws and regulations, develop sophisticated networks, and modify and adjust ways of conducting their businesses depending on threats and opportunities, and use newest technologies and many disruptive technologies as well. They conduct their criminal activities globally and consider borders as places of opportunity and safe line, allowing to escape from criminal justice. They tap into different kinds of activities. They don't miss any new opportunities. Human trafficking, counterfeiting, arms trade, drug smuggling, money laundering, tax evasion, identity threat, other cyber crimes, environmental crimes. I can continue this list endlessly. The link of smugglers with the other drug syndicates, terrorist gangs, transnational organized criminals, commercial fraudsters are well known, and the consequent loss to economy, job loss, and the loss to civil society is well documented. In this context, custom functions also evolved as well. Customs is not only an agency that provides fair revenue collection and equal market access, it also plays important role in protecting people and fighting against threats posed by the terrorist and criminal gangs. Traditionally, we have been noticing public sector being more bureaucratic, difficult to change, not ready to adverse events, not ready to coordinate. But throughout the years, we have been improving. Today, many customs administrations introduced 24-hour advanced manifest rule for sea cargo, authorized economic operator programs, and other programs that push the border out, meaning that intelligence-enabled risk-based controls can be exercised before the goods arrive at the borders. Airline industry introduced trusted traveler programs, and we have been seeing significant uptake in the exchange of passenger name record data between airlines and customs and border authorities for risk management. On the technology front, there have been improvement and important development, allowing for better detection of illicit materials, be it drug dissolved in liquids, weapons, ammunition in the hidden compartments of the vehicles, or counterfeit medicines that look exactly like original ones. However, one important factor that will either allow us or make it or break it, that is interagency cooperation. As many of the panelists today have demonstrated, this is the key. In the interconnected and globalized world, never has the interagency cooperation been so critical for the successful outcome of investigation and prosecution. Nowadays, it is often the case that one agency acts on behalf of other. For example, in some countries, customs are in charge of passenger or phytosanitary controls. It is also often the case that customs and other law enforcement agencies have overlapping areas of responsibilities, leading to sometimes competition of otherwise natural allies. Yes, customs and various law enforcement agencies, they have different operational approaches, cultural backgrounds, and maybe strategies. However, what unites us is a common goal to make the whole world a safer place. We all learned that trade facilitation can only take place after robust mechanism of risk management and targeting are in place to ensure that the illegal goods are detected and prevented from further movement through the trade corridors, and to make the supply chain more secure and integrity is maintained. While customs has invaluable expertise in trade, it may need support in investigation once illegal trades are detected and seized, maybe seized by other agencies. In addition, other national law enforcement authorities, including police, are very important intelligence to be used for customs border enforcement activities to protect our citizens and economy. And this is where we need the expertise, knowledge, goodwill, and the common will to protect society. As Mr. Betty had indicated, illicit trade is the area our common interest where our cooperation is critical. How illicit trade has impacted sustainable development goal, his studies have indicated. As we all know, World Customs Organization is a global voice of customs administration around the world. 184 customs administrations collectively process approximately 98% of all trade. As a global center of customs expertise, WCO is the only international organization with the competence in customs matters. In the enforcement domain, we are specialized in 6 major programs, namely drugs, environment, that is includes protected flora and fauna, CITES, as well as waste and ozone depleting substances, security, export controls, arms and ammunition, counter improvised explosive devices program, to name a few, IPR, cultural heritage, anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing. We develop and provide tools and instruments to our 184 member administrations support their capacity building efforts, and coordinate international operational activities together with our partners, including many of the joint operations where we use our other regional entities like RILOs, international organizations like Interpol, Europol, OLAF, and many of the world bodies and international organizations like World Health Organizations, United Nations, Organization of various other international organizations. When it relates to tools and instruments aimed at enhancing cooperation between law enforcement agencies, in March 2018, during 37th session of the WCO Enforcement Committee, WCO launched Customs Police Cooperation Handbook. This handbook, jointly drafted by WCO and Interpol, was developed to provide more understanding about the complementarity of each institution, identify opportunities for closer cooperation. The handbook also addresses the customs police cooperation at the national level by not only providing different cooperation models that exist today, but also suggesting an assessment tool allowing to evaluate the status quo between customs and police at the national level. We also have similar customs and FIU handbook, which helps customs and financial intelligence unit to exchange information and cooperation at both national and international level. The idea of saying that the conclusion of these handbooks is that levels of cooperation are dictated by national legislation, social and economic, cultural and political factors, but the need for cooperation that is universally recognized. WCO has been working for long to enhance this interagency cooperation through its programs. I will provide just 3 examples. First, WCO UNODC Container Control Program that was launched almost 2 decades ago is still important as ever. The core of the program is to provide a value-added mechanism by establishing and equipping interagency port control units and air cargo control units. Up to date, their program is operational in over 70 countries that establish more than 120 interagency units. Not only do these units receive training from WCO in different areas of anti-smuggling and enforcement, they also have access to WCO's secure encrypted communication channel, ContainerCom, allowing them to exchange intelligence and other data in a secure, confidential manner. Due to their interagency nature, these units manage to overcome the red tape barriers, reduce the time of response to any inquiry regarding the database search addressed to a partner agency, eventually leading to a wealth of seizures of a wide range of prohibited and restricted goods, such as explosives, weapons and ammunition, drugs, stolen vehicles, cigarettes, timbers, counterfeit medicines. To give example, in 2021, this unit established in the framework of the CCP seized more than 141 tons of cocaine, 191 million cigarettes, 1 million falsified medical products, plus 7 million other falsification, as well as significant amount of gold, other undeclared goods subject to revenue collection. Second example is the UNODC WCO Interpol AirCup project, which is the interagency project to build the capacities of various international airports in Africa, Latin America, and Caribbean to detect and seize illicit goods, both in countries of origin and transit countries. The project established joint airport interdiction task forces, JITFs, each linked to the databases and international communication networks of the enforcement authorities in order to facilitate the transmission in real time of operational information with the aim of intercepting high-risk passengers and illicit goods. The project also fosters the sharing of information between the services at the national and international level and promotes a control approach based on risk analysis, targeting with a view to combating drug trafficking and other trafficking of prohibited goods. The WCO contribution consists of mainly its provision in CENCOM, the secure communication tool, and key component of Project AirCop. Using CENCOM, field officers can exchange operational information through secure transmission of warning and seizure messages within a closed network of control group situated in international airports. The third example I can think of is WCO's Colibri project, launched in 2019. Colibri is aimed at monitoring and controlling general aviation along the cocaine route from Latin America and Central America to West Africa. How do we do it? We developed an innovative tool that brings different law enforcement agencies such as customs, police, air cargo, airport controllers, security agencies together, civil aviation authorities, allow them to cooperate in a swift manner. Colibri includes a database, a mapping tool, and a mobile application. In particular, the application allows its users to identify aircrafts, upload control data, as well as geolocate events, such as seizures, even aircraft crashes, or clandestine landing areas of small aircrafts and private jets. We are still at the early stages of project involving 15 countries in West Africa and Latin American and Caribbean region, but its uptake by relevant countries and agencies is very promising, and we look forward to its full deployment and many seizures. After a series of national training sessions on control methodology and use of GeoPortal, coordinated operational activities involving all security forces and civil aviation will take place over several weeks to stimulate interagency cooperation. On the international level, and in the spirit of good cooperation laid out by the Customs Police Cooperation Handbook, Customs FIU Handbook, both WCO, Interpol, and FIU, they established a practice of regular senior management meetings that are firmly embedded on our calendars. These meetings help us to streamline our agenda, track our joint projects, explore more opportunities to enhance interagency cooperation in different parts of the world. As all my panelists have explained, technology is the major enabler in not only ensuring the security and integrity in supply chain, but also it can bring regulatory authorities and law enforcement agencies together. And we have a noble mission. Lives and livelihood of people depend on how well we manage to achieve it together. So togetherness is the key, interconnectedness is the key, coordination is the key. And together we can defeat this menace of smuggling and other connected evils. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Shah, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Thank you so much, Mr. Das, for your very, very detailed talk. It has been most educative. Did the WCO notice any unique developments during the pandemic itself and the challenges which the enforcement officials had across the globe in meeting those challenges of the pandemic-related smuggling?
Thank you, Mr. Shah. This is a very important question. So what we have noticed is the coordination. It is not the coordination amongst the regulatory agencies or the enforcement agencies. It is also the coordination with the private sector. For example, during the last Operation Stop to enforce the activities, the customs activities to enforce against the counterfeit medicines and counterfeit vaccines, we have started interacting with the major producers of vaccines. We took them on board. We had series of sensitization program of customs authorities, our RILOs, our the national contact points, the international agencies like UNOCT, UNODC, WHO, Interpol, Europol, OLAF, and what we have noticed is the coordination and the mindset to address the issue together. That is most critical thing, and that we somehow overcome because of the fact that everybody is impacted by pandemics, and everybody knew that customs has a major role to play in cross-border facilitation of illicit vaccines, cross-border facilitation of illicit medicines, and to protect society at large. So that is where our commonalities of interest converged, and we could overcome, and large amount of seizures and various modus operandi could be detected. We could reach out to many of the stakeholders. We could get real-time exchange of information. And as I say, the coordination and real-time exchange of information is the key. And that is what is the one which we noticed is the key for future. Once we stay connected, we stay connected with the help of the modern technology, we stay connected with the help of the mindset, we stay connected with the help of attitude to protect the society. That is where our convergence of interest lies. That is where we have noticed in World Customs Organization, that is where our major joint projects, our joint operations have become successful whenever we did exactly that.
Thank you so much, Mr. P.K. Das, for having taken time off and joining us. We do appreciate your presence here, and thank you for your speech.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Balesh Kumar. Balesh has also had an extremely illustrious career in the Customs and Excise. He is currently the member investigation in the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs. He has worked in the UPSC. He has been in the Ministry of External Affairs. He has been in the Indian Consulate in Dubai. He has been Special Director, Enforcement Directorate. He was Director General of the GST Intelligence and also the Principal Director, DRI. He is nominated as the co-chair of Asia Pacific Group on Typology of Money Laundering and Terror Funding, and is a proud recipient of the Presidential Award for Specially Distinguished Record of Service. Over to you, Mr. Balesh.
Good afternoon, participants on this webinar. Let me first and foremost compliment FICCI Cascade for having launched the Anti-Smuggling Day, and in particular, Mr. Anil Rajput, who has been taking such steps and measures as to sharpen the focus not only on the counterfeiting of goods, but also smuggling and its consequences on the society at large. I've been associated earlier as Principal DG DRI with some of the fora and platforms which Mr. Rajput had launched and created. So compliments and congratulations. I'm humbled by the galaxy of speakers whom you have been able to collect on the webinar today. Each one of them has tremendous experience, and if I may say so, I had come with a prepared text, but the kind of discussion which has happened in last about 1.5 hours, I am abandoning my text and the prepared text, and now for next 10 to 15 minutes, what I am going to address is in 3 parts. One, because so much of concern has been expressed today morning, what is presently the government of India doing about it? Are we doing something about smuggling activities, particularly in relation to India? The second part, I would like to speak on various dimensions of smuggling, which includes smuggling on the land border, as the representative from the BSF talked about, or the maritime security, as the one from the Indian Coast Guard spoke about. And the third part, I'll be very brief in giving certain responses to certain remarks which have been made in last 1.5 hours. And to that, largely based on the current government scenario, which is happening over probably last few years. Let me first start with what is the government of India's efforts and responses on smuggling. Government of India has always been committed to combat smuggling. It is not to say that this effort has come about suddenly. Organizations like Customs and Directorate of Revenue Intelligence have been formed and have been in existence. Customs right from before independence, and of course the DRI since 1957. Probably one among the oldest organization of intelligence and investigation, particularly on the front of smuggling. Having said that, what are the recent efforts? You see, let me assure the audience here that Government of India is highly committed, and in particular, the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs is very strongly committed to fight and to combat smuggling. There are many efforts which have been going on in this regard. I think I will like to mention, particularly few such efforts. There are been these organizations which in their respective sphere have combated smuggling. Customs along with say BSF or the Coast Guard on the border. Again, there has been an excellent cooperation for a combat against smuggling between the customs and other enforcement agencies within the border, including the state police machinery. And you must appreciate that there are other activities which are carried out by such agencies. The state police is most of the time busy with law and order issues. Similarly, the customs is primarily a revenue collecting organization. And with the emergence of the dry ports, inland container depots all over the country, it has been quite a challenge to fight the other objective, or to serve the other objective of the department, is to combat smuggling. But that doesn't mean this activity has been ignored. So what has happened over a period of time? We have tried to institutionalize certain mechanisms to combat smuggling. These mechanisms may have been earlier a bit sporadic or unorganized. Today, I can say with some measure of confidence that a lot of activity is happening, which is, combating smuggling in the most invisible manner. And this probably goes in congruency with the kind of liberalization which this country has seen and the buoyancy of economy which this country has seen even in the face of adversities like COVID pandemic. To talk about COVID pandemic, Mr. Das also mentioned about the global efforts. But let me tell you this, that the anti-smuggling efforts were constantly on during this period. There was no letdown at any stage by the Department of CBIC against the combating of smuggling. And that is probably true of all of the departments of the government as well. Here I may mention that our Honorable Finance Minister, in the budget speech, chose to talk about the kind of commitment which was shown and demonstrated by the customs officers. During the period of pandemic, we lost quite a number of lives, over almost 150 officials at various ranks. But keep this in mind, that these very custom officers were on the forefront to not only clear goods which were so essential for saving human lives in India, whether it was the import of medicines, whether it was in the first phase import of items like mask or that thermometer. So those kind of things. And yet at the same time, they were equally committed to see that there is nothing which is imported which is illicit. At the highest level of the government, today, there is a very definite effort to institutionalize the cooperation and coordination among the agencies. This is something which has been spoken about at length by various speakers who spoke before me. These institutionalized examples would be, there is something called Multi-Agency Center, MAC, which is run under the aegis of Intelligence Bureau, and where almost every agency is meeting on a platform on daily basis. One of the recent additions for transmission of information and intelligence within the governmental setup is something called NATGRID. Now, NATGRID is functioning as a very efficient organization where there is, on real-time basis, flow of information as well as passing of intelligence to the concerned agency which is responsible for that kind of an offense happening. FICCI Cascade, as early as 2019, had highlighted some of the major adverse impact of smuggling on the economy, including on employment. I may add certain economic security consequences of smuggling, which include, first and foremost, on the creation of a black money. So unless and until we are cooperating with the authorities responsible for the collection and the anti-evasion activity on the direct taxes, which is the CBDT, I don't think our efforts could be comprehensive on that. Similarly, an important consequence in relation to smuggling has been on money laundering. Now, there is a very healthy cooperation between the customs agencies and the Enforcement Directorate as well as FIU, the Financial Intelligence Unit, India. More importantly, you have an organization called Central Economic Intelligence Bureau, which has created a platform again for flow of information through online mechanisms and network. FIO India also has its own platform to which such what they call as suspicious transaction reports are exchanged between the various agencies. Gradually, it has been realized that we need to have such institutionalized, strengthened mechanisms of cooperation because economic security cannot be separated from the so-called physical security of the border. And I'm happy to say that again, there are mechanisms laid down now for regular flow of information among agencies like DRI, Directorate General of GST Intelligence, Intelligence Bureau, RAW, and some other national security agencies. So today, in the eyes of the government, security is a very comprehensive problem, and it is being dealt with very comprehensively through multifarious activities of multiple agencies in a very coordinated manner. It's not disparate, unorganized efforts, and only once in a while that we come together. No, that position has been corrected. And today, we do realize that few thousand rupees may end up creating a bomb which can have a very lethal and deathly impact on any small segment of the society where it is blasted. So you see, there are interlinkages, both backward and forward. And unless and until you tackle that, you will not be able to deal with the situation created by smuggling in India as well as all over the world. I may also mention that one other dimension of smuggling has been the narcotics trade. And again, there is a very healthy cooperation among the NCB as well as DRI and some other agencies. So, you know, it's something which the audience must appreciate, that it's a problem, huge problem. Unless until we come together, we will not be able to take care of the situation. One last point, which I may mention, we cannot forget that today cyber security is another important dimension which cannot be separated from all institutionalized arrangements that we put in to combat smuggling. You see, the entire website of an organization like DRI can be assaulted by certain hostile interests sitting abroad. Kindly appreciate that today, when I say hostile interest, it's not only the state actors who are threat, but also non-state actors who can be a major threat to this situation of economic security as well as the national security, of which the economic security is a very important dimension. With that, let me come to the second part of my verbal impromptu presentation, if I may say so, is the various dimensions of smuggling. Here I just focus on smuggling and will try to make it broad-based, because so many of my past speakers have spoken on the various aspects of smuggling. Let me begin with the most lucrative item and the oldest item of smuggling from the perspective of India, and that is gold. Now, the gold, as I think Mr. Rajput said right in the beginning, because of the international arbitrage, moves. So, and where, because of the duty imposition or checks and prohibitions imposed due to other policy considerations like preventing laundering or generation of black money, then you have gold smuggling taking place. India, over the last 3 years, both the customs and DRI have done phenomenally well in checking gold smuggling. Some large seizures have been affected, and some small seizures have been affected. What is remarkable here, instead of getting caught by the statistics, for which I may have to look at my notes, and I don't want to do that given the kind of constraint of time under which we are speaking. Let me just mention that gold smuggling has vulnerability for terror funding as well. Please appreciate, in one of my papers, I have, which is a published paper of the FATF, I have brought out the risk and vulnerabilities associated with gold for money laundering and terror funding. Those interested can look at FATF website. The paper is available there. What happened over the last 2 years with the COVID pandemic? We found, and I'm talking only from the perspective of India, that flights, international movement of passengers stopped. Now, besides the coastal smuggling, particularly over the last 5-7 years, we had seen a spurt in the smuggling of gold through air traffic. With the stoppage of the passenger movement, the pent-up demand had to be filled. And we found that land border smuggling increased. The gold which used to earlier come from the Middle East, we found a major inflow of smuggling of gold through Indo-Myanmar border. Some major seizures were done. Those 10 tola biscuits were replaced by 116 grams gold biscuits. Johnson Mathai Swiss mark gold biscuits were replaced by marking, which had definite Myanmar impact on it could be seen. These were rough cast, each biscuit of 116 grams. We have brought and made very definite efforts along with agencies like Assam Rifles on the Indo-Myanmar border, as well as with BSF. And here we have talked at the highest level with the DG BSF, with the DG DRI talking to each other. And some major actions, operational actions were taken, resulting in major seizures. We then, another important dimension of our smuggling has been the narcotic smuggling. My colleague from Coast Guard spoke about those triangles in the crescent, but we found that there has been a major spurt in smuggling. If you look at the UN report on drug smuggling, and you would find that there has been a major spurt in growth of poppy plant in Afghanistan, and Afghanistan contributes almost 85% of smuggling relating to heroin. What is important, which we saw recently, has been that methamphetamine manufacture has also begun in a very huge quantity in Afghanistan, and which has also started spreading all over. I would like to mention the recent, if I may say so, there has been a change of rule of governance in Afghanistan. And we saw within few days of that, a few weeks of that, 3,000 kg of heroin flowing into Mundra port, which was very timely detected by the DRI. Now, within DRI or within the CBIC, there has been a major shift from detection, which is based on information-based intelligence, to systemic generation of intelligence. Mr. Betty spoke about red flag generation. Let me assure the audience here, we have taken it to such institutionalized levels that, in fact, on 1st of July 2017, we had set up an organization called Directorate General of Analytics and Risk Management within the CBIC, which is called DG ARM. And the creation of DG ARM has started generating results in such volume and with such accuracy that I can tell you that it is, in fact, in many of the cases, reason for success, not only of DRI, but Directorate General of GST Intelligence as well. We are doing risk assessment, not only at transactional level, which what we call as the National Customs Targeting Center wing of the DG ARM does it, and have been doing it for last 10 to 15 years. That wing was created almost 15 years because it was a realization by some of my senior officers, of whom few are sitting on this panel, that you cannot allow the customs facilitation unless and until you are able to sieve the unwanted, the undesirable flow of trade, which is by and large almost to the extent of 80-85% genuine trade, and needs to be promoted so as to propel the engines of growth in the economy. Now that has got integrated in a very institutionalized manner under the umbrella of DG ARM, and I can say with some sense of pride that beyond the CBIC, at the highest level of the government, in last few months, DG ARM is being recognized and being associated now with the national security endeavors of the government. DG Arm, you can imagine on the GST side, where there's just no scope for informant-based intelligence because all the transactions happen and are transacted online. So unless and until you have a very robust system of risk management in such billions of transactions, you cannot actually prevent a transaction which generates huge amount of duty evasion or tax evasion and having huge impact on the economy. You see, the violators go to the extent of generating fake invoices. And the CBIC, in the last 1 year, has taken momentous steps through DG Arm to check such fake invoices. I can say it with genuine pride. It is now widely recognized that the recent buoyancy of the GST revenue, which is now almost last month touched over 1,40,000 crores, 1/3 of it, we can say 2/3 of it has come probably, or maybe slightly more, 70-75% of it has come from the economy revival. And credit to our industry captains who are participating in this webinar. But probably 20% of that trade, which is the mischievous trade elements, have been checked deterrently through the combat by the GST formations, both the central as well as the state, including the Directorate General of GST Intelligence, on the basis of risk profiling and risk management being generated by the Directorate General of Analytics and Risk Management. Let me also speak about a third dimension of smuggling which is happening in the country. This particular part relates to, the public health. And in the public health, if you look at, I think the most important commodity which is vulnerable to smuggling is the tobacco products and cigarettes in particular. The Tobacco Institute of India has conducted a study where we find that almost 9% of tobacco consumption is in the form of legal cigarettes. So we are looking at something like 91% of the cigarettes in the Indian markets coming out of chewing tobacco, BDs, or illegal cigarettes. I'm talking about tobacco products in general. There has been very strong emphasis by Directorate General of Revenue Intelligence over the last 4 to 5 years. Mr. Dash is also part of the channel. This was probably emphasized by him, and then I continued, and now the present Principal DG also continues the emphasis on him, on checking this smuggling. And we find that most of the smuggling which happens is through in violation of COTPA, where you do not have the pictorial statutory warning. So many violations happen at the same time. I'm happy to announce that as late as 6th of February 2022, DRI in Imphal, Manipur, effected a seizure of 12.5 kg of gold coming across from Myanmar and over 46 lakh sticks of cigarette valued at over 9.5 crores in one single operation. And this over 46 lakh cigarettes had that high brand of 555 and Marlboro. So you can appreciate that, this kind of an operation, and this was a full 2 or 3 days operation, could not have been launched without very specific intelligence available within the system. So this is what we are doing. And I may mention so that it attracted the highest attention of the government because this seizure has been done, and this operation was conducted. Please remember that among the 5 election states, Manipur is also one of it. So smuggling can also have an impact on the kind of money which may be supported, which may be required to support, illegal kind of electioneering or political campaigns. Government is alive to it, and through the Election Commission of India and through organizations like CBIC and CBDT are trying to put that in check as well. We have been also, the fourth dimension of smuggling is what we call as environmental degradation smuggling. There have been smuggling instances which have been detected of ozone depleting substances. We have also, noticed that a lot of e-waste are coming into India illegally. It may appear at times, and mind you, I'm talking about our COVID experience. They talked about, to help the so-called, and I say the so-called poor in India, they exported from certain advanced nations computers and laptops which were of no use. The Customs Department checked that and stopped it. They also sent us, the oxygen cylinders which had been in use in hospitals there. So they also sent us used ventilators. Imagine the kind of COVID infection contagious was in this kind of import. So while allowing quality certified imports by the Customs Department, its enforcement wings ensured that such undesirable, impacting the environment as well as the health such items should not get imported into India. There was another dimension to it. As over probably very quickly, the Indian industry responded. And we started, as part of Atmanirbhar, we started manufacturing many of the, COVID PPE kits, masks, even thermal thermometers. And there was a change in the policy. Government was very responsive. What was being allowed to be imported was stopped. And now, in fact, at one point, there were ban on export of such essential items. The enforcement agencies quickly adapted themselves to the new regime of change which was required. So I'm trying to highlight that we do not only the enforcement agencies are so conscious of the government directives, but we are also so conscious of the public needs, which are which has to be time responsive. We have let me now come to our one of the last dimensions of smuggling, and that is the national security. We all will be aware of something which is called dual purpose technology goods, which as well as technology of that kind, which not only has items and goods listed in it and technology listed in it, which can be used for benign purposes, but at the same time, it can be used as weapons of mass destruction. There is a global unanimity on this, and we have, India has responded to it over a period of time. It is covered under the export policy of the Government of India, under the list of SCOMET. And the enforcement agencies have been very quick to tackle this kind of a menace to the national security. I may say it with some sense of pride that there were, goods of this kind moving on the coastline, threatening indirectly the Indian coastline between two not so friendly neighbors. And the Indian agencies were able to intercept that, take out from the vessels such goods which will have global international impact. And we were able to, then neutralize such items. There has been all kinds of threats to the Indian economy and to Indian security. Enforcement agencies, through organized, institutionalized mechanism, are thwarting and attempting it and attempting to combat it. Whether it is 3,000 kg of heroin landing on the west coast, or 303 kg of cocaine, one of the largest consignment, landing on the south coast, which have been intercepted by enforcement agencies of the CBIC in coordination with other agencies. I mentioned to you, every attempt or every piece of smuggling, every type of smuggling which is being attempted is being thwarted, is being combated. Take the example of the 3,000 kg of heroin which had arrived at Mundra. After the initial detection, which was highly appreciated by the government, and it's well evident if you have heard the speech of the Honorable Finance Minister on the floor of the Parliament about that case in particular. And the government did not hesitate to get it investigated in its full dimension, and the DRI did not hesitate to immediately pass it on to the National Investigation Agency, NIA, so as to look at some of the terror angle dimensions to such a huge season of heroin which is happening. Curtains are being raised, veils are being removed through our organized, institutionalized efforts. And I will like to conclude my verbal presentation with once again saying that very concerted, very organized, very institutionalized, very thought about, and efforts which have been going on for long, but are now adopting the latest state-of-the-art technology, removing discretion, mitigating corruption, so as to combat the scourge of smuggling, not only at the national, but also at the international level, in a manner which is befitting the national stature of India. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, Balesh, for your very, very exhaustive talk and putting in perspective the cooperation which we have been showing between the various agencies, which has resulted in outstanding success, all of which you have enumerated at length. Thank you very much for putting everything in perspective. The FICCI Cascade had also organized a competition to award winners of digital art and poster making competition with the theme of Stand Against Smuggling. I have great pleasure in inviting now Justice Manmohan Sareen to kindly announce the winners and also deliver his speech. But before that, I'd like to introduce Justice Sareen also. He has served as the Chief Justice of the High Court of Kashmir. He has played a major role in setting up of the Delhi High Court Mediation and Conciliation Center and has successfully trained over 300 mediators. He's been a recipient of the award for the outstanding contribution of establishing and setting up and running of the Delhi High Court Mediation Center. He's been chairman of the Delhi High Court Legal Services Committee and chairman of the program committee monitoring various programs of Delhi Judicial Academy. Between 2008 and 2013, Justice Sareen was Lok Ayukta for National Capital Territory of Delhi and has been rated by the Lieutenant Governor of MCT Delhi as one of the best Lok Ayuktas Delhi has ever had. The floor is yours, Justice Saab.
Good afternoon, Mr. Anil Rajput, Mr. Najib Shah, Mr. Stefano Betti, Mr. Anikat Singh, Mr. Amrish Kumar Arya, Mr. P.K. Das, Mr. Balesh Kumar, and Dr. D.P. Dash. distinguished eminent speakers, members of the cascade, distinguished guests, and members of the audience. The launch of the Anti-Smuggling Day has commenced exceedingly well. Considering that we have already had about an hour and a half session, I'm not going to dwell on what the speakers have said, except to say that we have had the privilege and pleasure of hearing the views of international and domestic experts, eminent speakers drawn from the former and current heads of the investigative and enforcement agencies, who have enriched the program with their perspectives and domain and practical knowledge, wealth of experience. Such interactions help in finding innovative solutions to combat the menace of smuggling and meeting new techniques and challenges adopted by those indulging in smuggling of goods, arms, narcotic drugs, and medicines, just to mention a few. Such interactions are essential for meeting new challenges adopted by those wishing to escape the rigors of law and punitive measures. Besides, there is need to evolve and adopt required changes in the legal, fiscal, and administrative framework of rules to empower the enforcement agencies to meet the challenges emerging. This is a dynamic and constantly evolving process. Here, sir, I would like to add a caveat. Though being from the judiciary, I must acknowledge that all these measures would not be sufficient by themselves to contain and meet the menace of smuggling and counterfeiting. I say this because what is to my mind essential, and this is a factor of which we must constantly be aware, which is consumer awareness and changing the mindset of the citizens and building public opinion towards shunning smuggled and counterfeit goods. This is not an easy task, since smuggled and counterfeit and imitation goods are available at significantly lower costs and prices. Hence, the need for citizens and consumers to resist these temptations. Our chairperson, Mr. Anil Rajput, has been working assiduously towards attaining this objective. The launching of the Anti-Smuggling Day, and in particular, programs of consumer awareness, are designed to meet this objective. Towards this end, FICCI Cascade had organized a digital art poster making competition with the theme Stand Against Smuggling. The competition received an encouraging response with over 250 entries. It was intended to inspire consumers and citizens to make them aware of the ills of smuggling and the harmful effect on the economy and security of the nation. The desirability of shunning and avoiding use of counterfeit products. Besides, such competitions also encourage creative skills and ability in the youth, simultaneously sensitizing them to the harmful effects of smuggling and imbibing in them a resolve to shun counterfeit goods. You can imagine, I can tell you, anybody who's honored with a prize. I remember even today, in class 3, I had won a recitation competition about the speeches of Swami Vivekananda. Now, these things, I'm now 75 years old. So much time has elapsed, yet that event and those prizes are still fresh in my memory, despite all the laurels one may have achieved all this while. So a youth who gets acknowledged today for his poster will remember it, and that He would be a unit of a family, inspiring his family and friends to shun these goods. Our jury comprised Mr. Narinder K. Sabarwal, Chairman, FICCI IP Committee and former Director General, WIPO, and Ms. Kameshwari Subramanian, international expert. We were overwhelmed to see plethora of ideas, innovative expression, and content exhibited in these posters. And the committee unanimously recommended to the chairperson that apart from the first three prizes as were contemplated, two additional prizes, that is special incentive prizes, be also given to encourage deserving participants. And I express my gratitude to Anil, who immediately accepted this and agreed to this. The criteria adopted by us to judge the posters was to assess and evaluate the theme, design, creativity, and the message being conveyed. Based on these, we have unanimously recommended the following prize winners for digital art posters: Ms. Bharat Garima, Mr. Harish Sahani, Mr. Praveen Kumar. Special incentive prizes to MS Hiba Alam and Mr. Rahul Sani. The prize winners would be awarded the prize money. All the participants are being awarded a certificate of participation to encourage them. I must acknowledge the earnest and active participation of my co-jurors, which enabled us to appreciate the numerous nuances and aspects of art, theme, and design. I would be failing in my duty if I do not acknowledge the hard work and constant follow-up of Ms. Kashifa, who has been working behind the scenes to make this program a great success. By program, I mean not only the poster program, but the launch of the Anti-Smuggling Day. Our thanks to you, Kashifa. You have always been a support to the Cascade. I would request her now to show an email video clipping showcasing the winning entries to the audience. We look forward to having many such competitions to fulfill the objectives of Cascade and its crusade against smuggling and counterfeiting. Thank you. And before parting, last request to Anil, we'll ask him to be a little more liberal in the prizes next time. I'm sure he would oblige. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Justice Saab. I would now invite Dr. D.P. Dash to make the concluding remarks. Dr. Dash himself is a former Principal Director General of DRI. He has served as the Chairman of the Enforcement Committee of WCO. He is a think tank member of FICCI Cascade. He is also currently been appointed by the UN Secretary General to monitor Security Council's sanction regime. Over to you, DP. And I would request you also to kindly conclude the program. Thank all the participants. Thank you so very much for your presence here. Thank you.
I request you to please unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Thank you. Am I audible now?
Yep, you are.
Yes, sir.
And sorry, because since morning I had some on and off some issues with my signals. Good, towards the end of it, I got back my voice. Good afternoon to everyone in India, and good morning to PK Das and Stefano and all those who are connecting from abroad. This is the first anti-smuggling day being observed in India, in a more formal and structured manner. I must thank Mr. Anil Rajput and FICCI Cascade for taking the initiative to observe one day every year as Anti-Smuggling Day. As you all know, International Customs Day falls on 26th January every year, and that's the Republic Day. And quite often, because of the plethora of programs that you have on the Republic Day, we do lose sight of the International Customs Day. So it's quite befitting that FICCI Cascade has chosen to have our own anti-smuggling day. I don't know the significance of 11th February, but I do believe that every day is important. Every day has its own contribution. Going forward, probably 11th February would again bring in a new dimension to the way we all think about smuggling in India and abroad. To that extent, we all are really grateful to FICCI Cascade and particularly to Mr. Anil Rajput. Historically, in fact, trade buddies have taken a lot of initiatives to solve problems for the country and also to improve its functioning. I don't know how many of you know. It's so interesting to share today with you that the suggestion for International Imperial Customs Service, which preceded Indian Revenue Service, Customs and Excise, we had the Imperial Customs Service. And the suggestion to have this Imperial Customs Service came from the Bengal Chamber of Commerce in 1904, and that was finally approved by the British government working from London then. So such has been the contribution of a trade buddy. And now it's quite befitting in 75th year of our independence, of Azadi. Now the trade buddy FICCI is coming out with such a beautiful, innovative idea to celebrate or to institute Anti-Smuggling Day in India. The menace of smuggling and all its effects on economy, employment opportunities, environment, including global climate, the society, and more importantly, post-COVID and the public health has been spoken and highlighted by all the speakers. I would just like to touch upon a couple of points in terms of its impact, in terms of the initiatives taken by the global organizations, both private and the intergovernmental, as well as in India. If you know, in Global Financial Integrity, the GFI, which is a Washington-based think tank, has been coming out with annual reports on illicit financial flows. Now, illicit financial flows would encompass trade-based money laundering as well as smuggling. But if you see on the same lines, in fact, the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence of India also came out with its own in-house illicit financial flow estimate, which more or less came close to the GFIs. In fact, the contribution of DRI to this global estimate can be seen from the fact that one of the member states, that is Switzerland, was not reporting to the United Nations its export and import figure to various countries. And primarily because of that, there was a huge gap reported between Switzerland and other countries, and particularly India, since we import a lot of gold from Switzerland. And it was on DRI's own initiative, the very methodology was questioned, and then they found and they have acknowledged the defect. The point of bringing this point to today's discussion is very fact that FICCI Cascade has started last few years making similar kind of estimates, which is purely our own and which goes much beyond the normal scope of just smuggling, but its impact on public health, its impact on employment, and on impact on various other aspects. So my compliments individually, personally, to FICCI Cascade for taking that. But if you just see the GFI's estimate in last 10 years, because that's pretty long and based out of UN Comtrade data, which is definitely is of acceptance value to all the member countries of the world. If you see in the last 10 years, the figures is mind-boggling. And it has taken $1.6 trillion of illicit financial flows between 136, 34 countries and the rest of the partners. In 2018, this figure was $850 billion, which was much more than when the estimate started in 2009 of $551 billion. And if you see India in that particular one, has been again going little above an average of $30 billion, which is around $38 billion. So from that perspective, you can see its impact if the illicit financial flows from and to India in a particular year is above $30 billion, what kind of impact it can have in terms of the tax losses and the public health and various other parameters that we talk of when we discuss smuggling. So with this background, I would just like to tell you there are various initiatives which have been taken internationally. Mr. P.K. Das, who's the Director of Compliance and Facilitation at the World Customs Organization, has talked about various initiatives taken by the World Customs Organizations. You know, this is an intergovernmental organization. India has been a very, very active participant of this organization. In a policy formulation level, they come out with a lot of recommendations. And not only that, the acceptability comes from the fact that WCO has had a lot of collaborative efforts with WTO, with Interpol, with the postal authorities, with the United Nations. And if you see primarily in the smuggling, there are two aspects. One is the persons who bring in goods, and others, the cargo that comes through by road, by sea, or by air, or of late, largely coming through the postal, which of course is used by all these three modes as well. Now, in that, WCO, in fact, came out with a very good initiative called API PNR, which is passenger profiling, which is so useful. And let me tell you that before any international passenger arrives in India, we have almost in all major international airports implemented at the APIs. And we do have the data about the persons who are coming, who are required to be searched or seized or arrested or given a green signal. And because of this, the facilitation of API system is very high in India, which is almost about 90-80%. So had it not been the case, probably every passenger would have been searched and would have been frisked by the customs, which is not happening. So if you see, by adopting automation and having new tools, we have been able to do two things together. On the one hand, catch hold of the guys who need to be segregated from the bona fide passengers for a detailed examination and to prevent smuggling. At the same time, those who are bona fide passengers, 98% of them just walk out as green channel passengers. Such a beautiful, the impact it brings in, and WCO for that matter to be credited. And I was privileged to be the vice chairman of this API PNR committee of the WCO for 3 years. On the cargo side, WCO has taken a lot of measures. They have come out with something called SAFE. They have come out with the Container Security Initiative and risk management system. India has been a pioneer, and I must put on record here the contribution of the predecessors, Mr. Jha, Mr. Najib Shah, and they have done so much to bring in automation into the system that probably Indian Customs is one of the very few government agencies which has adopted automation from 1986 onwards. And because of that, the facilitation level even through cargo, without opening the containers, without examining the goods, we are providing almost 94-95% of that, which is pretty good. So because of that, what Mr. Najib Shah spoke about, the ease of doing business or the ranking India had in the world customs, world banks in terms of the trading across the borders, India has made a humongous improvement in terms of its ranking, is primarily because of adoption of automation and adoption of a lot of these new features, which makes us to maintain a very fine balance between facilitation and enforcement. And these are the challenges. But on the other side, apart from the international initiatives by the intergovernmental one, there are various private agencies and various other agencies like Transit have been doing a lot of work. What our friend Betty spoke today about the initiatives which they have taken in particularly combating international smuggling in a very macro level and a very customized manner. Any particular country which would like to utilize their tools can certainly have huge impact within a very short possible time. WCO has come out with a new package. They have come out with Asikuda, and they also have a very new system which they have come out with called it's called Moses. As you know that the mineral resources are one particular the segment which create a huge amount of illicit funds, and with collaborating Zambian government, even CTAID, they have come out with this new system which has been doing exceedingly well in the African countries. Similarly, GFI has come out with another very important system called GF Trade for valuation purpose. And India has been one of the pioneers in setting up the Directorate of Valuation. And what GFI is recommending, we had done that almost about 20 years ago. So to that extent, India has been in the forefront in leading international initiatives in both legislative and executive and automation responses to combat smuggling. The last part, I would just like to compliment what Mr. Balish Kumar mentioned about how India has been responding to this. Been fantastic. The performance that DRI, Indian Customs, been doing over the years in various aspects, whether it's wildlife, whether it's dual use, weapons of mass destruction, commodities, equipment, or chemicals, or narcotics. In every field, there has been a huge effect and huge impact and improvement over the years. The Indian legal system, I must say that customs been pretty old, as old as the civilization, one can say. The Sea Customs Act of 1800 or the latest Customs Act of 62, we've been very comprehensive in our legislative response to smuggling. The definition that Mr. Najib Shah spoke of smuggling in India is very comprehensive. Any omission or commission that would enable any particular goods liable for confiscation would amount to smuggling in India. Apart from that, recently, in the last 2-3 years, we have made a lot of amendments. The Customs Act now is beyond the borders, which was earlier confined within the territory of India. And 2019, we came out with another very interesting, innovative product, probably the second customs formation in the world, to have a definition of Indian customs waters going up to the exclusive economic zone, which is 200 nautical miles, which gives that kind of power to customs vis-a-vis other agencies to enforce certain sections of the Customs Act up to 200 nautical miles, which is very, very, I must say, innovative in terms of its applicability. Apart from that, the third one, probably Indian Customs is one of the very few to have incorporated a provision for controlled delivery. And this you find in some of the laws of narcotics, but as a customs law, very few formations have that kind of innovative approach. And I'm sure Balis would make it sure that this act has an enabling provision in terms of the rules and regulations, and that can be put to good use to combat smuggling in India. The suggestion to Mr. P.K. Das would be that World Customs Organization, which is an intergovernmental one, most of the recommendations which come, they are primarily taken by the customs officials who do participate in the proceedings. But unlike other international organizations where the ministerial level participation is there, so that there is a commitment from the government to enable and to convert that to the law, is one of the major deficits in the functioning of the WCO. Probably something should be done that WCO changes its the mandate in a manner that the ministerial level of the various customs government formations do participate in policy making, so that this becomes a commitment by the government, and then the translation to the domestic law becomes a little faster. I must thank everyone for a fantastic presentation. You heard about the Coast Guard, you heard about the BSF, you heard about the customs DRI Indian formations as well as abroad. I must thank FICCI Cascade for organizing this. I'm sure this is just the beginning and journey that will be there every year, and we'll improve from stage to stage, from thematic to new thematic, and we certainly would make a huge impact. I take this opportunity to thank Mr. Anil Rajput, Mr. Najib Shah for organizing and monitoring the entire thing in his entire life, and now today transforming his experience, his knowledge and his skill in mentoring and also moderating these proceedings so very well, so very professionally. Thankful to him. He's been always a pillar of support to FICCI Cascade. I must thank Stefano Betti. In fact, both Stefano and I worked together as a member of the UN Odyssey trip to Nairobi, and our association goes back to almost 2004 to 2006, and over a period of time he has gone from a very basic functioning to the highest level as Deputy Director General of Transit and doing wonderful work in the international field. He spoke about the GPS-based and the RF-based track and trace monitoring solutions, which I'm sure would be very useful, and particularly if that can be combined with the blockchain technology that we have been talking about, the distributed mechanism that we've been talking about, which Mr. P.K. Das did mention, would go a long way in making the supply chain more secure and prevent smuggling to a very large extent. I must thank Mr. Aniket Singh, DIG Coast Guard, Mr. Amarish Kumar, DIG BSF, Mr. Sanjeev Tripathi, Secretary RAW, Mr. Deep Chand, Special Commissioner Delhi Police, Mr. P.C. Jha, former Chairman CBIC, Justice Manmohan Sarin, former Chief Justice of Jammu and Kashmir, and Mr. Balesh Kumar, the member Anti-Smuggling, Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, then Mrs. Kameswari Subramaniam, and last but not the least, Mr. Sinha, former director of CBI. If I missed out any particular name, it's not deliberate. I'm so sorry about that, because there was a huge signal problem here, and I couldn't take down the names properly while listening to all of you. I did miss out a few. With this, I thank everybody. I will be failing in my duty if I don't thank Kashifa. She has been single-handedly working over the last few weeks, I must say, ever since she took over from Swati. It's been fantastic having her. She's done wonderful work, and to make this particular day a success, she is the person who I think all of us need to acknowledge very loud and very clear. Thank you very much, Mr. Sabawal, the FICCI Cascade, and everybody for making this function a success. Thank you. Have a wonderful day and good evening to all those who are from different parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your concluding remarks and your kind words. I would like to thank my distinguished speakers, esteemed guests, FICCI Cascade think tank members, and my chairman, Mr. Anil Raj. Also, the participants for sharing their time in joining our fight against smuggling and making our resolve better. I hope you had an enriching session today. Thank you once again and have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Very enlightening session.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.